Welcome to the Startup Grind.
I'd like to introduce Aaron Klein. Aaron Klein is actually the founder and CEO of Riskalyze, which is actually named one of the top 10 innovative companies by Fast Company in 2015. He's a trustee of Sierra College, and he's actually was named 40 under 40 last year. And with that, I'd like to give everyone, give him a big raising hand. Come on, Aaron. You get a standing ovation and you just show up.
Standing ovation. In front of a warm, crackling fire.
Yes.
I like it.
So, what I try to do with these interviews is I try to kind of have the audience get to know you first.
Sure.
So, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, where are you from? What did your parents do?
So I it's interesting. Before we started, you and I were talking a little bit about kids and exposure to entrepreneurship. And I actually started working for my dad at the age of 12. So he had a company, wholesale distribution of like automatic gates and security equipment. And I was working for him in the afternoons after school at the age of 12. He knew nothing about child labor laws. He also, unfortunately for me, knew nothing about minimum wage laws either. But it was a great experience, and it really taught me a huge amount.
So what did you do for your dad?
Well, so at 12, I started packing boxes in the warehouse, right? And so what I really wanted to do was get promoted to answering the phones, but unfortunately my voice at that point sounded like a 13-year-old girl. So it took... Nobody say that it still sounds like
It's not very manly, Aaron. Don't worry about it.
But it just took a little bit of time before my voice deepened out and I could actually answer the phones and customers would actually talk to me. So, I ended up sort of running marketing and ops for him. I was, I think, 22 years old when I actually ended up, he decided to sell the company. And so I started like flying around to different potential buyers and basically larger competitors and negotiated the sale of his company.
You sold your dad's company?
At the age of 22, so it was a very interesting experience. It was a very interesting experience.
Where was your dad in all this?
He was running the business still.
Oh, okay.
It was a small company, right?
Okay.
So it was like 5 or 6 people.
Okay.
And it was great. I think the company existed for about 15 years, sold to this larger competitor. He ended up running that as their Sacramento branch for a while before he left. But we had sort of incubated something with the internet inside of that company there.
So that's interesting. So tell me, and I talk to startups, that is sort of an interesting thing. And what was the process of selling a company like?
Yeah, that was an interesting one because it was a very tough time in that industry. I'll just put it this way: one of the sayings that gets said is companies are bought, not sold, and we were definitely trying to sell, right? And so we didn't have aces up our sleeves or anything like that. Like we were playing a tough hand of cards. And at the same time, we had a good market position in Sacramento, had a lot of the customer loyalty in Sacramento, and so there were a few different players. There were probably like 3 or 4 serious potential buyers, and so it was just that process of going down and sitting down with them and saying, yeah, we're thinking about selling, and this is what they'd sign an NDA, and then we talk about financials, numbers, and getting them to get over the hump, and we sort of got it down to like 2 potential buyers, and then did a deal. So it was a very interesting process. I learned a lot through it. I'm sort of glad in hindsight. I haven't sold a company really since. I did one other like very small transaction, but we're not building this company to sell it, but I'll bet you it's a skill that will come in handy at some point. It certainly has helped me learn how to do deals.
Yeah, because that's interesting. It's usually, company, like you said, companies are bought.
Yes.
So trying to put yourself in the market.
Yes, it's challenging. It's challenging, and effectively and I don't think I knew this at the time, nor was I probably doing this very effectively at the time, but I think if I knew then what I know now, you're basically trying to give all the other companies the impression that you are in the process of being bought and do they want in, right? Today we're in the unique position at Riskalyze where we have meetings where people say, we want to do this partnership and work with you on this. What we don't want to do is wake up and find out that you're owned by our big enemy. So before you sell to them, you have to let us bid, and we say, great, we're not for sale. We don't want to sell, but fine, we'll agree to let you bid if we get to that position.
Wow.
So that's a fun
That's
position
a
to
kind
be
of
in.
cool position.
That is a cool position to be in, right?
That's very
yeah.
much so. I was looking through your LinkedIn profile, and it looks like your first, and I don't know if it's quite an entrepreneurial endeavor, but was that Master? Is it
That's my dad's company, Master Security.
Oh.
Yep.
And then then after that is Vestiva. Is that the internet?
Yes, that's the internet thing. So, it's sort of interesting how that turned out.
So you spun off another company.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was, my dad was a partner in that because we were, he was paying us and we were using his time. And then another guy in that who worked for my dad. It was like sort of the three of us that were like incubating this company inside of my dad's company.
Tell us about that.
So basically, if you think about it, like what I did is that I spent my early entrepreneurial career figuring out how to do it wrong. That way I can figure out how to do it right? So you do it wrong first. So we started out with a very, like a huge lack of focus. We were like intrigued by this internet thing. It's like...
what year is this?
This is like late 90s.
Okay.
So like I computerized my dad's business. He starts complaining that the fax line is constantly busy because it's this internet thing that's keeping the fax line busy all the time, right? And like that's the state of technology at that point.
AOL,
Yeah,
you got
well, it was a local internet provider, but yes, exactly. So we were just really intrigued by this internet thing we were playing with. I mean, the technology that was in vogue at that point was like cold fusion. So like you could build websites that did really interesting things that were not just static HTML web pages, right? So we were doing some interesting things with that. The company that we sort of incubated there didn't have a big focus. We were building some e-commerce sites and doing some different things for different clients. And then we started picking up a lot of clients in like the political campaigns, political parties, stuff like that. We're building some websites like that. One of the things that we figured out, so this is now about 2002. Incubated that company about 2000. So now this is 2002. So all of these, if just a little bit of political history, John McCain wins the New Hampshire primary in 2000, beats George W. Bush, right? Has johnmccain.com across the front of his podium, very innovative, okay? Raises like $1 million that night. So in 2002, fast forward to 2002, every legislative candidate running for anything, anywhere, goes, the secret to my success is to raise money online, okay? There's no Stripe. There's no Square, there's no PayPal really doing this kind of stuff. So they go into a bank and try to get a merchant account, and the answer they get is, well, we're going to need 3 years of financials and a business plan. And they're like, dude, I'm a political campaign. Win, lose, or draw, I will be out of business in 9 months. Okay, so they can't get a merchant account. So what we actually did, we realized that there was a big opportunity here. So we built a bunch of software. We stacked up a bunch of merchant accounts. And we started doing payment processing. I'm sure it was totally against like every Visa and MasterCard rule known to man. We were charging like 9% on the money because we had like all the risk. Right. If those donors charged back the cards, we were holding the bag. So we were taking a huge amount of risk with that. And if we'd had Riskalyze at the time, we might not have done that. But it all worked out okay. So we ended up selling that company to a larger competitor. It wasn't like a big successful sale. We actually sold it because we had this other opportunity that we wanted to pursue.
That comes still around?
I'm going to say that the payment side is probably not, because you've got stuff with scale.
Right.
Like you would do that with Stripe, or you would do that with PayPal or something like that today. So I'm betting that the payment side is not around.
The political side.
The political side, doing the consulting, I believe that company is still around.
Just interesting.
Yeah.
So then I guess the next thing you worked on was BizFlex.
BizFlex, exactly. So BizFlex was, so here we're doing some of this work for clients. We're doing the payments business. That's all cool. We sort of get the opportunity with a client. A client wants to do more than just e-commerce. They really want to, if you think about it, like they've got multiple warehouses, and they want on their website to be able. So this company, by the way, that I'm talking about, this client is the company that bought my dad's company. So they're interested in like having e-commerce that's like real time, so that their local customers can see what is in stock at the stores. So we start looking at that, and of course everything's client-server architecture with business operations software, so it makes it really difficult to actually do that. We're like, this is all going to go to the cloud. So we should build that. Like the only thing that's sort of like this is NetSuite was in its early days, okay? and they were very much focused on like the mid market to large market. So we said, gosh, we should build this for small businesses. So we put together a plan that said we needed probably like 25 million in capital to do that, in stages. I think we raised like the first million. We built the product. It was, we made a million mistakes. Like we scaled the company way too early before we had a lot of repeatable revenue. We were trying to boil the ocean. We were any wholesale distribution company was our target market. Like we had no specialization to really drive, great conversion. So we were bringing on some customers. We were making some of our numbers. Definitely not all of our numbers. Ultimately, what was really interesting is that, and I don't want to solely blame it on this because I think that we made lots of mistakes, but we were really sort of before our time. So this is like 2006, basically. VCs still scarred by the dot-com crash. What we heard over and over and over again was, dude, the internet is dead. Small businesses are never going to do software online. Like it comes in boxes, it's called QuickBooks, game over, end of story. I mean, it would be the same thing as somebody saying they were going to start Facebook today, right? They're like, Facebook exists. Why would you do that? Or something like that. Or a few years ago saying they were going to start a mobile social network because somehow that was different, right? And Instagram actually became quite a reality. So my point is, like, we felt like the world had shifted. The VC world did not, or at least the ones we had access to, did not feel like the world had shifted. So we could not raise that round. That was a painful process. And so that company did not work.
Well, you did raise, and this is something that I think all the startups that I will talk to struggle with is raising funds. You did raise $1 million.
Yes.
So how did you raise, the first round?
Sure. That's a great question. One of the people who's here tonight is a guy named Steve Ricketts, who is a really awesome entrepreneurial corporate finance guy, and has been a great friend of mine since 2005 when he and I met. And Steve was a really instrumental part of helping us raise that money. I would say that it was a lot of angels and who really bought into the vision and thought that was a good idea. And ultimately, I was sort of bummed by the outcome. I ended up losing more myself than any one of the individual investors, so they all still talk to me. But at the end of the day, it was totally not a success.
So BizFlex kind of went away? Or?
BizFlex definitely went away.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right.
So from there, at that point, BizFlex shut down. I'm out of a job. Everybody's out of a job. We had scaled the company way too fast before we had really repeatable revenue. We had, and that sort of is interesting because it plays into how we've done Riskalyze differently. You do everything wrong first and then you do it right later, hopefully, if you learn. We probably topped out at like 18 or 20 people, I want to say. That's my recollection. So we're all out of a job. That was very much not fun. I ended up having a couple of offers, neither of which I really was totally in love with, but ended up taking a job running global product for a division of Options Express, which is an options brokerage based out of Chicago. So they had an office in the North Bay, so I basically was sort of commuting back and forth to North Bay, and it was an interesting gig. I was there for 4 years. It was a...
And you had your children during this time.
I did.
So you were commuting with children.
Yes. They sort of rented us a house over there, and so it was like 3 hours away. So we would spend like 10 days of every 2 weeks over there, 4 days of every 2 weeks back here. So yeah, it was a very interesting time. So that was about a year and a half. Then I convinced them to let me just work from here, and I would go over and manage my team over there for 2 days every 2 weeks. So that was sort of that 4 years. So it's very interesting. 2007 to 2011, I have this like corporate job. I'm thinking about starting something because, this entrepreneurial thing sort of runs in your blood, right? And the payments business, we sort of touched finance, but this is, one of the first times. I'd also done a little bit of investing before, but I was just struck during that time about a couple of things. First of all, to be frank, it was a pretty interesting culture. I'll just leave it at that. At the company I was at, right? It was not.
Don't worry, this is not being recorded. So.
Oh, it's not being recorded. Okay, good. It was not the world's healthiest culture, and that was a challenge for the 4 years that I was there. The other thing that really struck me is that the average investor really didn't have much of an idea about what to do and how to think about risk. And there really wasn't a simple way for investors to think about that and to make intelligent decisions around that. So, spent that 4 years there. I had a really great, supportive boss while I was there. She really, built a great team. And so inside this company, we had a lot of fun. But at the end of 4 years, it was just sort of time. And so about halfway through, my co-founder at Riskalyze and I, we were both sort of being pursued by this friend of ours, who is this awesome guy who has a double PhD in complex dynamic systems and computer science. In other words, one of those ridiculously smart people that I just sort of hate. But anyway, he's like 75 years old, retired. He is after he invented some of the core technology that sits at the heart of what Riskalyze is today. He patented it and everything, and he was after us to start a company around this technology. And that was like 2009, and it took me 2 years. We started the company in 2011. It took me about 2 years to decide that there was actually something there. And so...
They just badgered you for 2 years?
Basically,
okay.
Yeah. And I mean, they I think probably by like late 2009, they thought I was out, and then, I was having dinner at Mike, my co-founder's house, and in like October of 2010, and he said, I went and I built a prototype of that off that technical paper. Because I was evaluated off of a 50-page technical paper, and that was just not enough for me to decide that there was some there, right? Mm-hmm. So he says, I went and I built a prototype. I got this physics grad out of Berkeley to build a prototype. He was a student in my brother's physics class at Nevada Union High School. And I said, cool. So, by the way, just a side note, that student is now our chief technology officer. Right? So
on the job training.
On the job training. So he builds this prototype. If you were here, I would call it the ugliest prototype I've ever seen. But it's true. He always says it's not that ugly. But anyway,
it was not a UI guy.
It was not a UI guy. Not a UI guy. Great math guy. So I played around with that. Was really sold that there was some there. Really dug into. So I started working then in November of 2010. My wife was really kind and overlooked the fact that I basically missed Thanksgiving dinner in the back room, thinking through business plan and what we were going to do and building out the deck. And so we went out and raised basically we just went out and raised the money to do it at the very beginning of 2011.
So at this point, did you just quit your job, or are you still working?
So I'm still working full time. I was not in a position, especially with the debt I took on from BizFlex, to be without a paycheck. I was not able to do that. So I was real clear with Mike about that, and ultimately, and it was interesting because he was not able to actually take an active role in the business at the beginning either. He is a financial advisor, and there's a couple of different ways financial advisors are regulated. He was on the side of the business where outside business activity is highly scrutinized, and particularly with his broker-dealer he was with, they would just not have allowed it. So he said, I can't take an active role in the business. We can talk all the time, right? But I can't have a title. I can't actually work at the company. I can't have an office at the company. I can't really be there day to day. And so that was sort of the deal going in. So it was an interesting process, but we went out and started meeting with some folks on weekends and evenings in different places to raise the money. We raised in that first round, I think we raised about $440,000.
Oh, respect.
It was hard work in small chunks. We have the world's most unusual cap table today, and I can talk more about that when we get into that. But I am one of the things that I very quickly learned is that there's the idealized view of things that Silicon Valley and venture capitalists sort of write about on their blogs, and then there's the real world, right, where we gut it out and we actually build businesses, right? And those are two very different things. So, we raised this money with a bunch of great investors. My friend Steve Ricketts was involved in that process as well. We had a bunch of other investors who were, some of them were advisors who really caught the vision. There's nobody famous in our investor group.
So how many people did you raise funds from, do you think?
So that initial group, I'm going to say was 8 or 9, maybe 10. That might be too small, frankly. It might have been more like 15 or 18.
Was it a big decision? Because,
There were some $100,000 checks. There were a bunch of $25,000 checks too. So it was a group.
So to jump into entrepreneurship, and I kind of struggle with this too, because I actually was forced because I got laid off from my last job.
Yeah.
And
that's a great way to become an entrepreneur.
I always think, I always say that you and I both have children.
Yeah.
And I always wish I had I actually work all the time. But laptop goes down at 5, and then it goes up at around 9 or 10 when the kids go to sleep. And I always think that I wish I was an entrepreneur when I was single. I could have eat top ramen and live in a garage. So I was thinking,
But you don't know anything when you're single and you live in a garage, right? That's the problem.
Sounds like Mark Zuckerberg.
Well, yeah. Only we're all marketing.
Yes, if only we were.
Yeah.
But I think that must have been a big decision. It's kind of a high risk going. Especially if you had a mortgage and 2 kids.
Absolutely.
To do that. So.
Well, and I was real upfront with our investors and with Mike and stuff. I'm like, I have to take a paycheck. I have to take a paycheck from day one. So if that's that was sort of the tax on our success, and I just said that's what I have to do. Otherwise, I will cheerlead for what you start. Right, and I will by all means support it in any way. I'll make phone calls and introduce you to people that I know. But at the end of the day, I can't really take this on unless I can take a paycheck on day one for money that we've raised, because I'm just not in that position. And so I think that works for some companies. I think it doesn't work for other companies. It works for some investors. It doesn't work for other investors. And you just sort of got to be honest with yourself about what works for you and what doesn't. Right?
I'm pretty sure you guys had to make the decision a family decision to go forward with.
Absolutely,
yeah.
And it was still risk, right? Like at the end of the day, I could easily have made at that point in time 2 times what I was taking out of the company, and that sort of continues even today. But that's cool. That's the risk you take, and I think it's turned out pretty well. So far.
So tell me about tell me about Riskalyze. I kind of get a sense of it, but tell maybe explain to the audience. What does Riskalyze do? What is the product? What's your model?
Absolutely. So at its core, Riskalyze is really about the idea that every investor has a risk number, has an amount of risk that they are comfortable with, they can handle. And it's not about how much risk they quote unquote need to take in order to reach a goal. It's not about how much risk they should take or can take based on how much money they have or what their time horizon is to their investments. It's about how much risk they're comfortable with. So those other factors are important. You've got to understand them. But it's one of the big challenges we have is we tend to ignore this idea of how much risk a person has the stomach for and can handle. Because we sort of, I'll just speak about the advisory industry, we've sort of stereotyped people. We say, well, if you're young, you've got to be aggressive. And if you're old, you've got to be conservative. Then we ask a couple of questions, and this sounds like a joke, but I mean these are real questions from real risk tolerance questionnaires. Do you get a thrill out of investing? If your portfolio was a car, what kind of car would it be? Okay. And they will take the answers to those questions, and then they will nudge people a little bit off the stereotype, right? So if you say Porsche, they'll nudge you a little bit more aggressive than your stereotype, and if they say Honda, they'll nudge you a little bit more conservative on your stereotype. And the reality is that is not risk tolerance. Okay, we believe, and we've been a little bit of a contrarian in our industry, but we believe that the true definition of risk tolerance is how far can my portfolio fall within a fixed period of time before I'm going to get emotional and capitulate and make an emotionally charged poor investing decision. Okay, so why is that important? Because the data says that as humans, we sabotage ourselves with our investing all the time. And it's as simple as this. When the markets are going up, we feel more optimistic, we feel excited about the markets, we're adding more to our investments, we're feeling good about that. We might even be feeling a little bit more aggressive. I was sitting in the lobby of a hotel somewhere, where waiting to check in, waiting for my room, and there's these 2 hotel people who are talking to each other about filling out their 401k paperwork, and the woman is like, I'm really not sure whether to choose conservative or aggressive. And the other guy says, oh, pick aggressive. It has been kicking butt recently. We feel good when the market is going up, and so we want to go for the thing that has the good return, right? Then the market pulls back, and we start getting really nervous, okay? And that's often when people switch to the conservative allocation. In other words, what they've done is they've sold, okay? Or they'll just go into their account, they'll sell all the stuff that they own. And they wait until the market feels safe again, and then they go back into the market. Well, what they've done is they've waited until the recovery has already happened, and they bought back in at the high.
Right.
So we sabotage ourselves. Just to put some numbers on this, there was like this 20-year slice in time that JP Morgan did a study. The market, on average, returned about 8% a year. Average investor got 2.3%. Okay? So they missed out on almost 3/4 of the investment returns because we're sabotaging ourselves. So we really believe that if we can help people understand their risk number, our mission as a company is aligning the world's investments with each investor's risk number. We think if we can get people invested in alignment with their risk number, they can stay invested for the long run, and ultimately that's going to allow them to be more successful. Because as Warren Buffett said, our human instinct is, he says the U.S. stocks are the only thing that the American consumer refuses to buy when they're at their cheapest, and only wants to buy when they're at their most expensive, right?
Right.
So if we can get people invested, within the bounds of their risk number, they'll stay invested for the long run. They'll be more successful investors.
So when I was looking through your company, I wasn't quite understand. Is this the tool for the investor, or is it a tool for like the financial advisor?
Yeah, great question. So today, it's a tool just for financial advisors, but we started very differently. And I think that was one of the first things that we learned is that you can start with a core and a core belief, and you darn well better, right? Like one of my good friends and a member of our board actually coined the term Roomba-preneurs. Okay, these are entrepreneurs who they're like the Roomba vacuum cleaner, right? So they just go along in a direction until they sort of hit a little bump, and then they just turn and they go in a totally different direction until they hit a bump, and then they turn and they right. So those kinds of entrepreneurs have no real core. They have nothing that they believe, right? They have nothing that they believe to be true that everybody else believes is not true, right? And so I think as a result, it makes it a lot harder to actually be successful, because at the end of the day, you're not going to try things long enough to make them stick. And we could talk more about that, because there were a number of times that we probably should have quit, but we didn't, and I think that's why we're here, frankly, right? But we started actually being consumer focused, and we made that strategy decision. I actually wouldn't change it, because I don't know that we could have been successful any other way. I might have tried to speed it up if I could see the future perfectly, but I wouldn't change it. We started consumer focused because we didn't believe that advisors would road test brand new technology on their clients. We said, advisors are at least not the kinds of advisors we wanted to work with, right? So we're like, any advisor who's just going to buy brand new risk technology and just road test it on their clients is probably not the kind of customer that we want. So we said, let's start with the self-directed market. Maybe sometime out in the unforeseeable future, out in some year like 2015, literally we said 2015 in the plan, we might do some kind of product for advisors. Let's start with consumers. So the strategy was build a really simple version of this, help people figure out their risk number, figure out how to get invested within the bounds of their risk number, using like ETFs, mutual funds, things like that, and put that out free on the web, and then monetize it. Basically prove that it works free on the web with PR and everything else. Then monetize it by getting a deal with one of the big 5 discount brokers, and they've got a real problem. About 93% of their funded accounts with money in them, haven't executed a trade in the last year. Okay, so it's not like buy and hold; it's buy and ignore. They're not; those accounts are not doing anything, so they're not generating any revenue for the discount broker because there's no trading going on in them, and frankly, it's not doing the right thing for the investor either. So that could be a really compelling value proposition. We looked at the math, for example, with TD Ameritrade. If we could have reactivated 10% of their dormant accounts, that would have been about $120 million to their top line. It's about 88% gross margin revenue for them. We could take $12 million and call it a day. That would be a nice deal, right? So we sort of started down that path. So we built out the core technology throughout 2011. sort of brought that product, that consumer product to market at around the beginning of 2012. And so that was like a successful failure, right? Like we had some great PR. We were in the New York Times, Barron's, NPR Radio. We had users build like $2 billion in portfolios on the platform. That was after we took all the billion-dollar portfolios out because we were pretty sure Warren Buffett wasn't using our website. So it was like average account size $27,000. So those were like real accounts for $2 billion worth of accounts. And we started, working with some of these potential partners. So biggest flaw in the strategy is there were only 5 prospective customers. Okay, so the 5 discount brokers, right? So that was the monetization strategy. So we Schwab Fidelity, we were sort of pessimistic about at the beginning because they tend not to do technology partnerships like this. And sure enough, they were like, yeah, we don't really do that. Scott Trade, if you've ever seen their ads, they're the one with the helicopter and that thing. They're an enigma. We still have never reached anybody on the retail side. We partner today with their institutional business. And those guys said the other day, don't feel bad about that. We can't reach anybody on the retail side either. So I found that interesting. E-Trade was you start to see the momentum we're having here. E-Trade was a financial basket case that year. So they were like losing their CEO, maybe sliding into bankruptcy. They like wanted to do the deal, but like just couldn't get a deal done. Then we got the deal with TD Ameritrade. Last possible customer for this strategy, right? We get the deal for TD Ameritrade. I fly to Baltimore like right before Labor Day weekend of 2012 to do an implementation meeting. So I get there. It's sort of, suffice to say, we have our champions in the room. We have huge detractors in the room who don't like the idea at all. And about halfway through the process, somebody pipes up with the fact that their website is built in this antiquated web technology, couldn't possibly be integrated, with what we've built, and we're going to have to wait until they relaunch their new website, which is going to happen in 4 to 6 quarters. Okay, quarters. And I'm thinking to myself, and we have 3 months of money in the bank. Okay, so this is not the definition of not good.
Chance right here.
Yeah, right. So they're like 4 to 6 quarters. Let's revisit this. That's sort of the message that we get from that meeting. So that was a long plane flight home. Somewhere I still have the page in my notebook where I scrawled the Apollo 13 question at the top. What do we have on the ship that's good, right? It struck me as I was on that long plane flight home that the one thing we really had is we had like $2 billion of validation of the technology. Right? Like we knew the technology worked. And we had some demonstrable data to back that at that point. So I got home and we sort of called everybody into the office on Labor Day weekend, and we just said, okay, why don't we take our last ditch effort and let's rebuild this as a product for advisors. All right? We'll see if it works. If it doesn't work, we'll just sort of that'll be the end of this. So we did that. We sort of hacked together a quick product for advisors. I went to a conference at the end of October, sort of stalked this one relatively famous advisor, managed to get a little bit of a meeting with him, showed him the technology. His name is Josh Brown. He's the reformed broker on Twitter and sort of a famous advisor. He's on CNBC, 3 times a week. So showed him this really crappy demo of our beta, and he was just in love with it. The conference was being held at a movie theater, and he was walking up to these people going, "This is brilliant!" And they're like, "Sir, I just sell popcorn." And so it was a very interesting moment because here we are, we built this beta, we're not really sure if it's working, we're not really all that impressed with it. Most advisors that we're trying to show it to are like, I don't really get the concept. And here's this guy who's totally famous on TV 3 times a week saying, this is brilliant. You guys are onto something here. So that is truly the definition of smoke but no fire. And that was the environment that I had to go out and raise money in to try to keep the company alive because, we're looking at that, we're like, well, there's some there. We started picking up a customer or 2 at very, very low prices, but we actually like made our first sale. We actually booked some revenue. This was a new thing for
all this time
us.
right now, you didn't have any revenue?
No, not a dime.
Wow.
I shouldn't say that. We were collecting interest on the money we had in the bank. So we had about $93. So I mean, yeah.
This is the money you're living off.
Yes, as we're building all of this. So
what year was that, Aaron?
that was Labor Day 2012. Yeah.
And you hadn't raised any more money?
Well, no, we had raised sort of in the middle, at the beginning of 2012, to push forward on the consumer strategy, right? And then again, had sort of like we had a lot of good smoke but no fire. We felt like an E-Trade deal and/or a TD Ameritrade deal was going to happen. Again, TD Ameritrade deal basically happened but then fell apart. Then we sort of, if you want to use the word pivot, that's fine, but we've got the same mission and the same core. We just changed the channel we were going through, right? And rebuilt the product for advisors, and then once again we're in a position where there's smoke but no fire, and we go out to investors. Fortunately, our investors are awesome people. Like they looked at it and they said, "We get it." Like this, and remember we had some investment advisors who had invested already, and so they're like, "Yeah, we get it. This is great." So our investors backed us. We did come. I want to say it was January that we came within about 2 weeks of going dry and running out of money. So it was definitely a tough time for the team, but got the round closed, and ultimately it still took. So remember, Labor Day of 2012, it took until we lived until like April of 2013 with just a small handful of customers, and we sort of came out of beta at that point. You asked me what was the catalyst that started making us grow in April of 2013. It was a combination of product. I mean, we spent that 6 months just feverishly following, not just slavishly following what our customers asked us for, but feverishly following what their real motivations were and marrying that to our vision for what the product could be. So we weren't always building what they asked us to build, but we were building what we knew would get them very excited and delighted. And I would say we just sort of hit critical mass in April, and it just started exploding. And it was so 2013 we just started seeing steady growth all throughout April. I think it was probably June that we said, hey, we haven't had a week that we haven't sold at least one new advisor, sent for a couple of months, right? We were a team of like 4 people at that point in time. So we ended the year, with pretty tremendous growth. I think we ended with about 14 people. The following year, we like 8x'd, and then we ended the year, I want to say, with about 28 people on a team. And today we have 85 people on the team. So it's been a wild ride.
So even though you had this sort of consumer focus in the beginning, and somewhat I'm getting a sense, without doing that, you wouldn't have the data to back up.
Exactly right.
So if you had not gone that route,
exactly right.
You wouldn't have been able to sell to the financial advisor.
That would be my argument. I just it's hard to go back and replay what might have happened. Could we have convinced advisors to buy it anyway? Maybe. I don't know. I doubt it. So I think at the end of the day, like I said, if I could have seen the future perfectly, we might have sped up that process, wasted less time talking to E-Trade and TD Ameritrade and all those guys. On the other hand, TD Ameritrade is a fantastic institutional partner of ours, and it's largely the friendships that we made and forged in 2012.
So now you've got the deal with
Well, we've got a different deal with them in that we partner with their institutional business to work with all the advisors that they serve as a custodian, and that's a huge partnership for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I heard, and do you do a lot of blogging? Is that you?
Well, I used to do more,
Yeah.
and then this started happening to my life, and and I do less today.
So someone was telling me, I don't know if it was Laura, but you actually
I still tweet a lot.
I
He
now follow you.
Yes, I microblog that. 140 characters at a time. I do.
But I think I had heard it was you that actually you brought a lot of traffic to your site just by like blogging daily or something like that.
I would like to say that I brought a lot of traffic to the site, but I think in all honesty, we probably got the most traffic from PR. And Josh Morgan, who was here earlier, was one of the guys who really helped us. He gave us like a really, really good deal and helped us out with some early PR. He had his own firm, Morgan Dorado. So he was super helpful. We also just we just followed reporters on Twitter, and then we would try and get engaged in their stories and try to send them interesting things. You know, the thing about reporters and getting PR is it's all about what you can do for the reporter, right? Like, they have no duty to write about you. So it's all about trying to give them some kind of interesting insight or data or something that they can use as an angle in their story that they're already thinking of writing. And a little bit of it is like luck and magic, because you want to be handing them something that they go, I was just about to write about that. This is helpful, right? And so it's really just like trying to build friendships with reporters and trying to share interesting data and get lightning to strike. We had 3 major PR hits in that time, and like I said, I think it was New York Times, Barron's, and NPR, and that probably drove the most traffic to our site.
So was that through Twitter, or?
Yeah, you know, I think Josh particularly worked on the New York Times and really landed that for us. I think Barron's was through Twitter. I'm pretty sure NPR came from the New York Times story. That's the other great thing, is PR often begets PR.
So you're saying the poor man's way of PR is following
reporters on Twitter. Absolutely.
Okay.
And then engaging with them in a friendly way. And if it's very obvious that all you're trying to do is get a story for your company, that's not going to be super helpful. Like, you're just going to have to actually engage.
Are you messaging them, or you?
I'm just complimenting their stories, and then
right.
saying, this is, you know, it was really interesting what you wrote here. We've seen X in terms of like trends or something like that. And it only takes a few times of that, and you know, they might say, then, you know, lightning strikes and you're actually following Twitter, and one of them goes, you know, has anybody heard about X, Y, or Z, and you have a piece of trend data about that you could contribute, right? And you reply back and have some trend data on that you could add to their story, and all of a sudden they actually want to talk to you on the phone, right? So it feels a little bit like lightning striking, but yeah, that is poor man's PR, right? Follow them on Twitter, engage, actually build friendships, and try to give them something that's useful for them, right? Because like I said, I can't tell you how many poor reporters I would say, you really ought to write about our company, and they're not interested in writing about your company. They're interested in writing about something that will get them a lot of readership, and if it happens to quote something from your company, that's okay with that.
Right, so I'm going home after this and following lots of reporters.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, get off LinkedIn and onto Twitter.
I think Twitter is great for engagement like that. I don't see that happening on LinkedIn as much. That's just my view, but I don't know. For me, Twitter has always clicked. And
Well, I usually use the LinkedIn where I post something and I'll tie it to my Twitter.
yeah.
But actually I think it's partly because of Laura. I've been just regularly tweeting myself.
Well, we all learn about Twitter from Laura.
Oh, yeah.
So, absolutely.
By the way, she has been officially crowned the Twitter Queen of
The
Sacramento.
Twitter Queen of Sacramento. Makes sense to me.
So, actually, with that, let me, before I take it to the audience, do you have the advice for entrepreneurs? You know, what would you advise, someone that wants to do it, let's think about a startup, what advice would you give them?
I'll zero in on 3 things. With raising money, you are looking for, just stop reading venture capitalist blogs. They are not giving advice that is useful to you, unless you are starting a company that is going to be like the next Snapchat or Instagram or something like that. And if you're doing that, honestly, just move to the Silicon Valley, get involved in some kind of accelerator, or do something like that. Like that's probably the best way to go.
My advice to them.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what those guys are writing about. Okay, that's not the kind of company that, if you want to build and gut out and build a real business. You can raise money, but it's not going to look at all like the VC blogs talk about. It's going to look sort of like how we look. We've got like 60 investors on the cap table. Okay, ranging in sizes from $25,000 to $500,000 at this point in time. We're totally happy with that. At some point in the future, we'll do a transaction, and we will take all those, we'll let all of those early investors exit, and we'll have a long-term partner or 2 or 3 who will take out those shares. We've got lots of offers to do that right now. We're just not really ready to do it yet. So if you build a great successful company, you're going to have plenty of opportunities to do that for your investors. When you think about raising money, realize that you're looking for a very different audience from the VC blogs. You're looking for, you only need one. Don't put all of your eggs in that strike the big A round basket, in my view, unless that's the kind of company you're trying to build. VC money is like rocket fuel, okay? It works really great in rockets. Okay, so if your whole goal is like to build a $1 billion business or die trying, we think we're actually on to a $1 billion business here. But we didn't want to set ourselves up where we would have to build a $1 billion business or we die trying. Our cap table is such that if we, for some reason, decided to sell or decided to be acquired or something like that at $400 million, our employees would make a lot of money and our investors would make a lot of money and it'd be a great outcome for everybody. Okay, and that's our view. But unless you want to build a $1 billion business, sort of take that VC sort of feel out of things. Stop reading the VC blogs and focus on the kinds of investors who can get you there.
Going back to and it sounds like you mentioned you had like 60 investors or so.
Yeah, we have at this point. Yeah.
Where are you finding these people? What are numbers and emails too? So
yeah, numbers and emails. Yeah. So they're very widely distributed geographically. Okay. They're nobody famous. Even here in Sacramento, they're nobody famous. We specifically looked for people, by the way, who like financial advisors who had expertise and understood the idea, and then we sort of went one degree out from there. So a lot of them were bringing their friends in to the process. So for example, this is what I mean by stop reading the VC blogs. A lot of the VC blogs will say, well, gosh, you don't want an investor who doesn't care about your business or doesn't bring expertise like dumb money. Okay. I got to tell you, I think it would be really stupid. Those investors have not met my 75 investors. Now, my 75 investors, or 60 investors, whatever it is, have not. A lot of them don't have necessarily big expertise in our business, but they're not dumb money. Okay, investors are smart. They take a look at the opportunity and they invest where it makes sense for them. And there are investors out there, as long as you can show them how you're going to build a business that gives them a return on investment. They exist. But you're going to have to, my argument is you start with people who know and trust you well and believe in you, and potentially have some expertise in the space, and then go out a few degrees from there. And it's hard.
So you're not like, there's no like magical list.
There's no magical list.
You're basically working with your own community and just getting referrals. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. And I think if you can find a Steve Ricketts, that's really great too, because he's been a great friend and a great counselor throughout this whole process. And it's one of those people. The other thing is we started, and he introduced me to investors early on for BizFlex. I went back. We have a lot of BizFlex investors who are invested in Riskalyze, and part of the reason they took my call is because I lost more money than they did. But the other
lose more money than your investors.
Lose more money than your investors if you lose. Don't lose. That's the primary goal, actually. Don't lose their monny. But at the end of the day, like a lot of those investors took my call. They know that we put our heart and souls into BizFlex. They know that we did our best. They know that that ultimately I ended up losing more than any one of them did. And ultimately, when I went back to some of them with Riskalyze, they looked at it and they said, this has a lot of promise. It may work, it may not work. They jumped aboard, and I think they're very excited about their decision at this point.
Okay. So okay. With that, I'm going to open it up to audience questions. And so, employees of Riskalyze, ask away. And your wife.
That's right.
Right.
So my little sister is a financial advisor, and
wow.
As soon as I found out what your company was and what it was doing, I immediately shoot her an email, hey, my buddy has a company, check it out, here's what it is, da-da-da-da. And she emails me back, she's like, well, I work for one of those big 5 firms that you mentioned.
Okay, yeah.
And she's like, and we already have that technology, and it's so great, and maybe that's just for smaller independent guys. Yeah. And I'm like, it was tough because I'm kind of talking to your employees here, like I'm her older brother telling her, to do this, and so it must be tough, I guess, trying to do that for a larger firm.
Sure.
Schwab.
Yeah. So did he sneeze?
Schwab.
Yeah. So we have not focused on any of the big wirehouse firms. So we're actually partnered with Schwab on their institutional business, but they also own branches where they have employees who are advisors, and that's probably where she is. Those are the advisors they employ. We haven't worked with those kinds of advisors yet, emphasis on yet. We also have not worked with any of the big wirehouse firms. So there's sort of 5 big firms, right? And they're about a third of the total number of advisors. So you got like Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, UBS, then people will start disagreeing, but I'll say Wells Fargo and probably Edward Jones. Okay, so we haven't worked with those. We focus right now on independent advisors. There's about 200,000 of them in the United States. Independent advisors get to make their own decisions, by and large. A good chunk of them do need to get clearance with their compliance department, okay? But those firms are built in a way that they're supposed to provide choice and let their independent advisors make good decisions about what technology they want to use. So we built very much from a bottoms up, and there's drawbacks and benefits. Now we've grown very, very quickly. I think that is simply attributed to the fact that a bunch of really awesome Riskalyzers have built a product that is so compelling that advisors just absolutely love it. Okay, so product market fit, we sort of finally hit that in April of 2013, and it just started exploding. And product market fit, there's no scientific definition to it, but you know it when you have it. Okay, because those customers are just like, wow, I've got to have this. So we sort of hit that with independent advisors, and that started exploding. Now, independent advisors, each of they're usually under what's called a broker-dealer. Each of those broker-dealers has a compliance department. Each of those compliance departments we have had to have a conversation with to get approved, but we haven't done those big firms. I will tell you this though, it's hilarious that you said those exact words about, oh, we already have this technology, and this is just for the small independent guys, right? We work with a lot of what we consider to be big firms with 20 advisors, firms with 50, 60, 70 advisors, and we have broad penetration, one advisor at a time, in some of the largest firms in the industry. So like LPL Financial is a firm that has about 14,000 advisors. We have, I think the latest number that I saw is we've got like 1,300 LPL users on our platform. So, I think we're one of the most used, partners of LPL in their firm, of all their different products. And
What's LPL?
LPL is just this financial service for their broker-dealer. So they have 14,000 independent advisors who are, in your local community using their own business name, but they're affiliated with and they're hanging their license at LPL.
Oh,
okay.
Got it.
So LPL's compliance department has approved our product, for example, and that's just an example. We work with all of these different firms to get the product approved. However, I have shown the product to teams at like Merrill Lynch and Morgan Stanley before. Okay, and you want to know why? Because their clients wanted to invest in the company. And one of the things that the potential investor would say is, this sounds really interesting to me. I'd love for you to show the product to my advisor, and if he likes it, I'll invest. Okay? So the advisor sits down, and of course they're all very, very nice because they're doing something for their client. And all of them, to a man or woman, said, I'm really excited to do this meeting with you. Of course, I am not a potential candidate for your product because, I'm with Morgan Stanley, and Morgan Stanley gives us all of this technology. I mean, we have like the world's greatest here at Morgan Stanley. And so we have all that technology like in-house, but I'm very interested to take a look at this and, in terms of for my client. Then we do the demo, and halfway through the demo, they're looking at their partner, they're going, good Lord, how are we going to get corporate to allow us to use this? So, that's typically, I'll tell you, it's indicative of a broader problem that we have, okay? Even companies that grow really fast like ours have problems. In fact, sometimes we have more. But one of the problems that we have is, quite honestly, we haven't come up with, we think we're sort of close, we haven't come up with like a 2 or 3 word definition of what we are, okay? So as a result, it's challenging sometimes for people to look at our website, and it's easy for them to say, I already have that. Because they're like, I have ways that I think about risk. I have ways that I understand how much risk my clients want. What they don't see is that, sort of how we do it is so unique that it really, one of the ways that we finally nailed how to describe it, even though this is beyond 2 or 3 words, is we say, Riskalyze helps advisors show their prospects that they're invested wrong and prove to their clients that they're invested right. We think we're on to maybe that 2 or 3 word description, and we've started using it a little bit, and it seems to be resonating really well. We call it a risk alignment platform. It's really about helping advisors drive risk alignment with their clients, and that's something that really hasn't existed in the industry before. And quite honestly, that's why I think we've grown so fast. It's a product that advisors just die for as soon as they actually see it, okay? And it's something that they really can't get anywhere else. Like, there really is no direct competitor.
Actually, how did you figure out your pricing? Because I went with this. And I talked to startups that struggle with how to price their product.
Yeah.
And you're even more unique because you don't really have a competitor. So how did you figure out the pricing?
Great question. Okay, so to be brutally honest, I started with this. I was like, I want to have a price that lets us build the broadest, biggest network of advisors we can the fastest, but balance that with we need to generate enough revenue to start generating, to pay the bills and be able to grow and be able to hire the employees we need to hire. It's a fine balance. So first thing we did, just to sort of test the market, is we went out there. We needed to raise cash, so we wanted to sell all annuals. Okay, so we went out there with like I think $4.99 a year, and we called that the charter members plan. Okay, so if you want to be like, it was going to be a limited time. If you want to be a charter member of Riskalyze, you can join now for $4.99 a year, and that was probably our first 20 customers or so. And hey, that's $10,000, so that's not bad, right? Right there. It's called raising money that doesn't dilute your equity. Okay. So the
Kind of like the Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah. So we went from there. We pretty quickly zeroed in on. We felt like it was very much. One of the things we did is we tried to see what was this worth to our customers. Like how much revenue would help them generate. And it became pretty clear that we were probably worth $300 or $400 a month. Like given how much revenue we helped those customers generate, we're probably worth $300 or $400 a month.
Is this something that they said to you, or?
Oh no, I have yet to ever have a customer tell me that they're willing to pay what they end up paying. Not once. Okay, so asking your customers what they will pay is not as I don't recommend.
They're going to lowball you.
They all do.
Right.
They all do, and they'll. Oh no, nobody would ever pay for that. Nobody would ever pay that much. I mean, I might because I sort of get it, but nobody will ever pay that. Right? Like I heard that a million times. So we said, okay, we're probably worth $300-400 a month. We went out and looked at other products that were being sold to the same customers in that range. They were picking up the top end of the market. They were definitely not getting a broad spectrum of the market. So we decided early on to bring our price a lot lower than that. So we started out at like $99 a month. So that's what we did. And it became like an oh duh kind of price. Like we are literally, our sales team is able to say today to a customer, and advisors, I love them. They're some of the cheapest bastards I've ever met. I love them to death. But I've had advisors whine on the phone to me about $99 a month, okay? Especially in those early days. They would just whine. And our sales team is still able to say, look, if do you believe that this can help you land new clients? Well, yeah. Okay, so none of us are stupid here. We all went to math class. If this product helps you land one new client, it's paid for itself for about 2 years, okay? And we're going to help you land a lot more than one. And at some point, you just have to say, look, that's the price, and that's the way it is. And I'll tell you what, we have this little saying around our office. It's not if, but when. We actually have a Slack channel called Not If, But When. Every time we lose a customer and don't get a customer on board, a post goes up in Not If, But When, talking about what their objection was. That's one of the ways our sales team gets better every day, okay? And I cannot tell you how many advisors said no and come right back in a week and a half later, and they usually buy online without trying to talk to a salesperson because they're embarrassed. They tried to call our bluff, and we stuck to our ridiculous price of $99 a month, which is going to make them thousands of dollars in new revenue. So that's the honest answer of how we.
So sort of just trial and error a little bit.
A lot of trial and error, and here's what we've done. This has been our philosophy. It's a subscription software product, okay? We have never actually. I don't think we have anybody on $4.99 a year. But once we went to $99 a month, the retail price of the product now. I'm sorry, the list price of the product now. It doesn't sell to retail, but the list price of the product is $129 a month. We have customers on early on where the price was discounted down to like $79. we've never actually raised prices on existing customers. So I always viewed it this way: you can always raise the price. You can raise the price for new customers. You don't even have to like get the old customers angry. You can just grandfather them in. That's what we've always done. I'm not saying we'll never, phase out old plans and bring old customers. We're certainly providing a boatload of value to them at a ridiculous price. But we're sort of at the point that we're more interested in getting more advisors into our house than we are in anybody leaving. Our friends, I have friends in the industry who go, good Lord, you would have such an easier time if you charge $3.99. You'd lose the bottom 20% of your customers and make 80% more money. And I go, I get it, but our strategy right now is focused on building the broadest, biggest advisor network because we've got a lot of plans for where we're taking the company from here.
Okay. More questions from the audience? Laura?
You said in winter of 2013 you had 4 employees.
Yes.
And that's including the founders.
So Mike hadn't joined us yet.
Oh.
So even though he was a co-founder, he couldn't have any active role in the company, so I'm not counting him. So it was 2 engineers. Matt Pistone, our chief technology officer today, was one of them, and an intern. Yep. So that was the beginning of 2013.
And then now you have how many?
85.
And
85 Riskalyzers. We got about 15 in our new office in Atlanta. We've got about 5 who are remote, just sort of spread across the country, and then the balance are all at our headquarters in Auburn.
And you've moved like 3 times in Auburn, is that right? Or
Yes.
has it been more than that?
So we're on our 3rd office in Auburn. Our first one was this really awesome bunker type building in Auburn, which was really cheap and affordable. Actually, Auburn now has an accelerator, and it's located in that building, which is sort of cool. So they've sort of built a technology accelerator, sort of co-working space there in Auburn, which is cool. So we moved out of that. Well, we moved out of that in January of 2014, and we had 1,500 square feet, and we had totally blown that space out. I know Dan had joined then right about that time, and a few other people here probably joined right about that time, and so we had just blown. We were stacked on top of each other in that space. So we, given my deep capabilities in strategic planning, that was a joke. We signed a 3-year lease for a new space that was 4,100 square feet, and we're this is great. This is going to be our permanent space. We're gonna, we can fit 25 people in here, for crying out loud. And so that space lasted us 51 weeks. And so I'm sort of done trying to guess what the growth rate will be, right? So we secured our new space, which is a grand total. We just got the rest of the floors this morning. So I think we're at 14,500 is the total space in that building. So we'll be at 14,400. We can fit about 100 employees there in Auburn. So we'll have some room to grow above our 65. Insider information, you asked me for insider information in this interview. We just signed a lease for the remaining 2 floors in our building that we didn't have. There you go, insider information. We can fit about 100 in Auburn ultimately. We signed a 5-year lease there. That's what you've got to do in that space. We'll be in that space for 5 years, is my gut. Now that probably won't be true since I said it, but I think we'll be in that space for 5 years, and we might have satellite offices in Auburn. Yeah, 51 weeks, exactly. We might have satellite offices in Auburn. We opened Atlanta, and that gives us a lot of flexibility. We're hiring people in Atlanta as well, so we got 15 in Atlanta, room for about 30, 35.
One more question sort of related to growth. How much of your talent did you find within the region? And for the talent that you had to recruit to the region, if there was any, was that difficult, or did they want to come?
Sure. Great question. I would say the broad majority, not even the broad majority, I can count on one hand the people that we've recruited to come from a distance. Dan was one of them who moved here from Portland to join us. We had our head of support move from Orange County. He had some roots in the area, so that was a little bit more natural for him, but we relocated him from Orange County. Otherwise, I think it's all been local talent. And I don't know, I hear the complaint about talent from time to time. I think that this is a very talented area. I think that we've got a very unique advantage here, because we're basically 2 hours from the San Francisco Bay Area, We have way higher quality of life. I think that we have really smart people who have decided to choose to live here rather than live there. And we've found that there's a lot of engineers who are working in their functional job, but not in the technology industry here. And they are really excited about going to work for a real technology company with things like stock options and a great culture here. And so we built that. Like, we built I think a really great place to work. And it's not just about perks. And yes, we stock every Riskalyze's favorite drink, or at least we try to, but it's hard to keep track of what their favorite drinks are now. But yeah, we have Coke Zero, don't worry. So it's my favorite drink, so it makes it helpful. But drinks are helpful, perks are helpful, but at the end of the day, it's really about having a place where you know that if you show up and you work hard, like, you're going to move the needle, and you're going to be able to see the results of your work, right? And you're going to see how it makes a difference for the company, and by extension, then for your own career. And I have worked in challenging cultures where you knew that regardless of what you did, okay, whether you worked hard or didn't work hard, okay, you were going to get stuck in politics, infighting, bureaucracy, and nothing was really going to happen at the end of the day. And and really the goal in that kind of culture is, let's just make sure that our team doesn't take the blame when the whole initiative fails, right? And so, like, we have built a culture, and we've really invested in building a culture around the opposite of that. And I think, I find that we are not the highest paying employer, because we can't be yet. You average in the stock options, and I think we might be, but stock options are for the future, right? So we're not probably the highest paying employer, but boy, when we do our job right with recruiting, and somebody comes in and sees the kind of culture and environment that they get to work in at Riskalyze, we quickly become an employer of choice. And I love that, and that's where we want to be.
So you had a big failure with the other business.
Yep.
Right?
This
You
Flux.
lost and then you lost a lot of money. Your investors lost money, and then you had to go back to work.
Yep.
After 4 years, you pretty much staged a comeback.
Yeah.
But I want to understand. I guess fear takes over at that point, because you've lost your shirt literally.
Yeah.
And then you're an entrepreneur, and you want to come back and do this, and so you know what the depths are like.
Yeah.
And how did you overcome that hump?
Great question.
And then also go back to the same investors, and still kind of test the waters to see if they still believe in you. And I think it takes a lot. I think
It does.
so. I want to understand, what
Sure.
your
Yeah, I'm just kind of running through that mind too.
So,
Tell me your risk number.
my risk number is 88. So that tells you something, right? That's my wife. Tell them your risk number, she says. So, and her risk number, by the way, is a little bit lower than mine, just so you know. But it works. That is a great question, and I think that I'll put it this way: I know what it's like to hit a brick wall at 90 miles an hour. Because the backstory of BizFlex is that we really thought we had the Series A raised finally in a very backwards kind of way, and we sort of had the deal, and we really thought that it was the deal and everything was fine. So we'd really overextended ourselves, even beyond overextending ourselves. And then that lead investor sort of went to the hospital and died, and like the whole thing fell apart. And so we hit that brick wall at 90 miles an hour, and that was one of the most painful experiences I've ever been through in my life. It has been interesting doing this a second time.